This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. If I get drunk.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sooner Nation podcast. Man, I got to tell you, Norman has seen its fair share of big football games over the years, but Saturday night, it felt different. Oklahoma knocks off number 15 Michigan 24-13. And that just wasn't another early season win. That was a statement by Brent Venables and company. It was the Sooners standing up on the national stage and kind of saying to everyone, you know what, we're back in this conversation. And here's what made it special. It wasn't the old Oklahoma formula. This wasn't the 49-42 shootout that we kind of gotten used to over the last couple of decades. No. This was a game that was all about grit. It was about defense. It was about a transfer quarterback who walked into the biggest game of his career and played absolutely without fear. So let's start there. Let's talk about John Mateer for just a minute. Washington State transfer, he wasn't perfect. He did have the pick. He had another one that should have been. Missed a couple of throws, but dang, he was relentless. 270 yards passing, 74 rushing yards, 3 total touchdowns. And it just kind of seems like every time Michigan thought that they had him, he slipped away. He made off-schedule plays that we honestly haven't seen in Norman since the days of like Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, going back that far. And you could feel it. The confidence that he carried, it kind of rippled through this entire offense. But the biggest headline of this game was really Brent Venables' defense. For 2 years, we have been, Sooner Nation, kind of questioning if Oklahoma would ever look like a Brent Venables team. Now, we saw such a big step in 2024, but still you were dealing with missed tackles, third down conversions, and you just kind of had that Big 12 moniker, that Big 12 brand of football, all offense and no defense, just kind of stuck with you. But that all flipped on Saturday night. Oklahoma held Michigan to just 288 total yards. Bryce Underwood, the 5-star freshman, we hyped him up going into the game. I think his future, there's nothing that I saw that makes me think he doesn't have a bright future in Ann Arbor. But just 9 completions on 24 attempts. And what I loved about it is that when Oklahoma blitzed him, he was 0 for 8. So that's not a bend but don't break defensive situation. That is suffocation. That's a defense that's got teeth into it. And here's what really impressed me. The biggest takeaway I took from that game was Oklahoma's physicality. Oklahoma was, hands down, the more physical of the two teams on the field Saturday night. And when you consider that Michigan's entire identity is built in the trenches. For years, they've been the bully. But on Saturday, it was Oklahoma pushing Michigan around. Now, you've got the one long touchdown run by Justice Haynes. He's just that good. But you got the big run. But other than that, he was bottled up on the night. We'll come back to him later on. But the Sooners hit harder, they played faster, and they looked very much the part of the tougher of the two teams on the field. And that's the culture shift that Venables has been preaching ever since he got here. Now, does all this mean that Oklahoma is a finished product? No, absolutely not. Look at the run game, for example. I mean, outside of John Mateer, there's still a lot of concern there. Clearly, Jaden Ott is not healthy. And Oklahoma is going to need him long term. You can, for all the good that Mateer is, he's got that Brett Favre, that gunslinger mentality. And that's just going to lead down the road. That's going to lead to more turnovers. And, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Michigan had a freshman quarterback making his first road start. I'm saying all this to say context matters. But let's not undersell what all of this means. You just go back 2 weeks ago, and Oklahoma wasn't even ranked in the coaches poll. Now they're sitting at number 16 in the coaches poll and number 13 in the AP. That's one of the biggest jumps in the country. And it's not because of history. It's not because of hype. It's not because of branding. It's because what this team put on tape Saturday night. Now, here's the kicker. This was just the beginning for Oklahoma. According to these same polls, Oklahoma still has 6 or 7 more ranked teams ahead of them on this schedule. Auburn's teetering right there. You've got Texas, you've got LSU, you've got Alabama, you've got Tennessee. I mean, this gauntlet is real. But now the Sooners, they've got some momentum. Now they've proven that they can win with defense and this type of quarterback play. And that's a formula that travels. So here's where I stand on all of this. Saturday wasn't just about beating Michigan. It was about Oklahoma rediscovering itself. For the first time since Brent Venables took over, this team looked like it belonged on the same field with not just the SEC, but the upper echelon, the elite of the SEC. And that changes the conversation. The Sooners are relevant again. They're dangerous again. And if this really was the turning point, we might look back at this September night as the night Oklahoma football truly arrived back on the national stage. So let's dive deeper into this, because I've got 6 takeaways from this game, including what it means from Brent Venables, what we learned about John Mateer, and why this defense suddenly feels they've got an identity. This is the Sooner Nation podcast. All right, so let's talk some football. Man, for you, gosh, it's been 10 years, right? I mean, I feel like it's been 10 years, almost. I mean, the Sooners have been chasing one thing for almost 10 years, it seems like, and that's balance. Going all the way back to the closing end of, that tail end of Bob Stoops' tenure. I mean, we've all known that Oklahoma could score points. That's outside of 2024. That's really never been a problem. But it just seems like when the games really mattered, when the lights were the brightest, too often Oklahoma lacked the defense, that toughness on defense to finish the job. But that changed last Saturday night. That script has flipped. That 24-13 win over Michigan, Brent Venables, his group, they didn't just win with offense. I mean, they suffocated one of the more physical programs in college football. And while the defense was the story, I mean, you can't overlook John Mateer, because what he gave was the exact spark that they missed in 2024. Now, I mean, let me be clear with what I'm going to say here, because as I mentioned earlier, this wasn't a game that was defined by Oklahoma's flash. This game was defined by grit. It was defined by defense. And it was defined by the quarterback play, the kind of quarterback play that gives our fan base, the Sooner Nation, real hope for something more than just relevance, right? I mean, John Mateer walked into his first real test as a Sooner, and he did not flinch. 270 yards through the air, 74 on the ground, 3 total touchdowns. And like we said, he wasn't perfect, right? He threw an interception. He missed a few throws. And that ultimately, that kept Michigan in striking distance. But you know what? He was relentless. He kept drives alive with his legs. He absorbed pressure without folding. He made those kind of off-schedule plays that this, outside of a few flashes from Michael Hawkins, we didn't see any of that last year. I mean, they even said on the broadcast, I mean, he seemed impossible to sack. Now, I know Michigan got to him twice, but you get the point. But again, man, this is a game where you're happy with John Mateer. You're happy with what you got with this offense. But you keep going back to the defense. Because it looked like a Venables defense from his glory days at Clemson. We thought Michigan might have some problems on the road with Underwood. But man, 288 total yards. The Wolverines managed just 5 first downs in the entire second half. Now, and Underwood, I mean, again, freshman, we've been saying that, but talent. He was the crown jewel of Michigan's recruiting class, and he was rattled. No way you're going to undersell that point. He was overwhelmed in the moment. He couldn't get comfortable. He couldn't find his rhythm. 9 completions on 24 attempts, 142 yards. And like I said earlier, when Oklahoma blitzed him, he was 0 for 8. They didn't just slow down Bryce Underwood. That's what the plan was, slow him down. But, man, they flat out suffocated him. And that's exactly the brand of football that Brent Venables was hired to deliver here in Norman. And let's be honest, the first 3 seasons, those first 2, left people wondering if it would ever happen defensively. I mean, again, you saw that step in 2024, but man, you just, how many bad memories do we have of missed tackles? How many bad memories do we have of 3rd and long being converted? There was just too many moments when it felt like Oklahoma was still, even in 23, when the offense was humming with Dylan Gabriel and Jeff Lebby, it just, like they were trying to be Lincoln Riley Sooners without Lincoln Riley. But that's all changed. It's all different. Saturday night made all of it different because the defense wasn't just opportunistic. It was punishing. Think about that Kendall Daniels hit on Justice Haynes. The screen pass, that's all over the place. And that was a snapshot of the night. Fast, physical, intimidating. I mean, Justice Haynes was billed as the SEC caliber running back, and he absolutely is. Don't get me wrong, he absolutely is. He flashed that early in the 3rd quarter. But Oklahoma was faster. Oklahoma was more physical. Oklahoma was intimidating. And that was the defense that we wanted to see from Brent Venables. And we saw it in abundance on Saturday night. Now, the timing matters. The timing matters so much of this. It was the only top 25 matchup of the entire weekend. And this wasn't Illinois State in week 1. This was Michigan. This was a program that's 2 years removed from a national title. This is a program that prides itself on beating you in the trenches. In Oklahoma, they didn't just match them, they led them. And they wore the Wolverines down. Think about that 4th quarter drive. That was the most impressive thing I saw offensively all night. I know it ended with just a field goal. But that drive was masterful. 16 plays. 16. 78 yards. Nearly 8 minutes off the clock. That drive, it's not going to show up on the highlight reels. I really haven't seen anything on social media about it. But that was a championship caliber football type drive. A year ago, there's 0 chance. There is no way Oklahoma could have pulled that off. Now, we do have to pump the brakes. Before anybody crowns this team, I do think we got to pump the brakes because there are concerns. We mentioned the running game outside of Mateer. We're going to come back to that later on. It's a work in progress. And Oklahoma may see tougher defensive fronts in the SEC. And that lack of balance, if they can't get it fixed, that could bite them. The turnovers from John Mateer, we've seen it 2 weeks in a row. I mean, he's got that gunslinger mentality, but that's fun until it leads to turnovers. And then again, you got to keep coming back to this. He's talented, but Underwood was just a freshman making a start on the road in one of the toughest venues in all of college football. So let's celebrate, right? Celebrate. Be happy. Be enthusiastic. But also remember that context matters here. But here's the bigger point. Oklahoma came into this season with whispers about being a playoff sleeper. And many people, even people in the state, they just brushed it off. But Saturday night, those whispers got a whole lot louder. Because this team, it's not about hype anymore. They've got receipts. They've got a top 15 win. They have a quarterback who plays fearless. And they have a defense that finally looks like it belongs in the SEC. And I mean, we're just going to keep bouncing back and forth, I think, between Mateer and this defense. But, man, he's clearly the missing piece. And go back to his poise on that late game drive. That's the kind of things that we look back on, and it gives us confidence as the fan base. Man, he just kept picking up first downs with his legs. He hit throws in big spots. It's that dual threat ability that means that you just can't key on one thing if you're a defender. And Wink Martindale, that's a great defensive coordinator that Ben Arbuckle was beating in a chess match. I mean, he just proved that he will be a nightmare for opposing defenses. And you got to think he's just going to keep progressing. It's not, you got to think he's going to keep getting better. And it's not crazy at this point. It's not crazy to imagine his name showing up in some Heisman conversations a little bit further down the road. But this was a statement. Hands down, undoubtedly, this was a statement for Brent Venables. After years of transition, after the roster turnover, after the questions about whether Oklahoma still belonged on the biggest stage of college football, we got that answer on Saturday night. The Sooners, they're back in the conversation. And they're back because of their physicality. They're back because they were faster. They're back because they were stronger. It wasn't rinky-dink. It wasn't tricks. They were the more physical and the more talented team on the field Saturday night. And they looked, for the first time since joining the conference, they looked like the kind of team that's not only going to be able to survive and tread water in the SEC, but maybe be a contender now. They'll compete in it. So what does this all mean? It means that for the first time in a long time, that Oklahoma feels dangerous again. It means that what the fans saw in Norman, what the nation saw in Norman on Saturday night, it wasn't a fluke. It was a glimpse of what Brent Venables has been building towards. Saturday wasn't just about Oklahoma beating Michigan. It was about Oklahoma rediscovering itself. It was about Brent Venables calling this defense, about John Mateer delivering the spark that the offense needed. It was about the Sooner Schooner rolling again, let's be honest. And for a program that kind of began to starve itself a little bit for national relevance, absolutely, this was not a victory. This was a statement. So when the top 25 polls released on Sunday afternoon, one of the biggest movers was the Oklahoma Sooners. They didn't just beat Michigan in primetime, as we've discussed. They reintroduced themselves to the world of college football. 24-13 win over the Wolverines. Oklahoma jumped 8 spots to number 16 in the coaches poll. They jumped 5 spots to number 13 in the AP poll. Now think about that. This is a team that wasn't even ranked in the preseason coaches poll. Now 2 weeks later, they're inside the top 15. Again, that's not just progress. That's a statement. Oklahoma is back. They are back on the national conversation. And again, I know I'm retracing some of my steps here, but it's so interesting to me how they did it. Not with that high-scoring pinball football that, we saw under Lincoln Riley in the last few years of Bob Stoops. The quarterback's throwing for 500 yards, wideouts putting up video game numbers. That's not what this was about. That's not what this team is. This was Brent Venables' blueprint on full display. Suffocating defense, situational discipline, and the quarterback dynamic to swing a heavyweight matchup. Michigan came in higher ranked. So it's not just us that was hyping up the Wolverines before this game. They came in the higher ranked of the two teams. There was a lot of hype, and we participated in that surrounding Bryce Underwood. A lot of hype. We participated in it about the physical Wolverine offensive line and the defensive line. But they left Norman frustrated, out-muscled, and second-guessing themselves. And if you're a part of Sooner Nation, that's exactly what we have been waiting to see. Because it carried two big messages, that win. First, this defense, it is consistent from 2024. It's real. And second, John Mateer, I don't think there's a might here. John Mateer is the missing piece that elevates this team into true contention. I don't know. Look, we're so quick to rush this Heisman storyline. But he's there. I don't see how he's not there. 344 yards and 3 touchdowns. Again, he's not flawless. There were a few throws that got away from him. That Michigan's pressure affected and forced him to make some tough decisions. So, you got the pick. And so it wasn't a flawless execution by any means. But, his playmaking stood out. He extended drives with his legs. Think about the big throw to Satina on the scramble where they thought they had him in the pocket. He under duress, he played. He carried himself with confidence. And that kind of rippled through the offense. And so if you're looking for a difference between this year's Oklahoma team and last year's Oklahoma team, the biggest one to me, I think it starts with John Mateer. The defense, I think it looks like the defense has progressed a step further, but the defense was there last year. But the defense, we're going to keep pinballing back and forth. John Mateer was the man. But this defense, I think it deserves a spotlight in a way that it deserves a spotlight in a way that probably this defense hasn't earned in a long, long time. I think we're going to look further down the road and see how key it was, what an accomplishment it was just to hold Michigan to 288 total yards of offense. I think we're going to watch. I think we're going to watch Underwood progress and see the kind of quarterback he's going to be. But know that they forced him at this inexperienced level into a miserable night. 9 of 24, no touchdowns. They just completely disrupted Michigan's rhythm. But I think we're gonna look further down the road and just really appreciate this moment a month and a half from now. The defense was fast. It was violent. It was disruptive. And like I said earlier, it looked like the Clemson defense from Brent Venables' heyday, except for this time they're wearing crimson and cream. And they looked like, honestly, they looked like a team that could go toe-to-toe in the trenches with the most physical programs in the country. And that's why the pole jump matters here. Because this isn't just recognition for beating Michigan. This is voters signaling, wait a minute, Oklahoma looks different. Now, like we said, remember 2 weeks ago, this team was a preseason afterthought. And now they're knocking on the door of the top 10. And that's a massive swing in perception. Now, there's the but was always coming here, right? It's still only week 2. And for Oklahoma, the climb is just starting. And the path ahead for the Sooners is just absolutely brutal. Now, according to this coaches poll that just released on Sunday, they're going to face 6 more ranked teams just in the regular season. When you look at the AP, there's 7 because Auburn is ranked in the AP. And they're the first team coming to Norman to kick off SEC play. But, man, you look down that line, you got, in no particular order, Alabama, LSU, Texas, Tennessee, Ole Miss. That gauntlet of heavyweights it's either going to validate the rise or it's going to expose how much more work there is to do with this program. But here's the thing. Polls shape perception, and perception shapes opportunity. Oklahoma's in a position now where if they keep stacking wins, that playoff conversation, it's going to take care of itself. The committee is going to reward strength of schedule. And Oklahoma, man, they have that for days. That looking at that schedule, 7 more ranked opponent means plenty of chances to prove legitimacy. And if the Sooners navigate that stretch with 1 loss, maybe 2 losses, you better believe that they're going to be right in the playoff debate. And let's be honest, for OU fans, this is about more than just numbers on a poll. For us, we want that legitimacy. It's been too long. It's been too long that since we were there, right? You didn't end the Big 12 on a high note. Oklahoma football was defined by empty fireworks and defensive collapses. That's what they had become with Lincoln Riley. But they have flipped the script. They beat the Wolverines not with flash, but with grit. And they climbed in the polls not because of their reputation, but because of what they showed on the field. And that's the type of credibility that can't be faked. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not here to crown Oklahoma as a finished product. The running game outside of a tier, like we said, it is a question mark. And we're going to talk about this late in this final segment. But I think Jaden Ott's health is something that we need to watch closely. The offensive line was better in week 2. It's steady. But, that was just the only test that they've had. I don't think they're going to get tested against Temple. And again, that gunslinger nature of John Mateer, it's going to create turnover risk. And what is that going to do down the road in other big games? What's that going to do in the Cotton Bowl, right? What's that going to do in Knoxville? And again, you got to say it. You got to say it for what it is, because if this was any other team, we would be saying it. Michigan's inexperience at quarterback helped Oklahoma's defense look dominant. And I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say. But here's what's different. Legitimately, for the first time since Brent Venables took over, this program looks like it's on schedule. The defense is nasty, the quarterback is dynamic, and the polls are now catching up to reality. They're not just ranked anymore. Oklahoma is relevant. So here's my final thought on this. Obviously, polls don't win championships, but they do capture momentum. And right now, Oklahoma has it. A program that a lot of folks outside of Norman had written off as a step behind the SEC elite programs suddenly looks like it belongs in the same conversation. And Saturday night against Michigan, it was the reintroduction for the Sooners. And Sunday's polls were the confirmation. So Oklahoma's back on track. They're back in the national spotlight. And you feel like when you look at the complete product of this team, you really just feel like they're built to stay there. All right, well, here we go. The final segment of the Sooner Nation podcast. Again, I just want to say thanks to everybody who takes the journey with us. If you're listening to us on Spotify, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you are, would you do us a favor and hit that like? Make sure to look us up on Instagram, Heartland Sports, also on Facebook, Heartland Sports. We got a lot of fun stuff out there. You can find us online, heartland-sports.com. Oklahoma, Michigan. Sooners take out the Wolverines 24-13 in a game that just wasn't your typical preseason non-conference victory. It was very much, as we've talked about, a resounding message. It was Oklahoma reintroducing itself to the nation. It was Oklahoma showing off a powerful and suffocating defense. It was the nation seeing a quarterback who looked like a star in the making. And really, man, I haven't mentioned this yet, but kudos to the crowd. Kudos to the crowd for reminding everyone why Owen Field has long been one of the most hostile environments in college football. For Brent Venables, year number 4 leading this program, it was, I believe, I was trying to think about this, whether it was this or the Texas game, the Texas win, but I think this was hands down the biggest win of his tenure. And the reason why I said that is because this gives him some breathing room. I mean, he's been kind of on the hot seat, and now he can kind of, take that deep breath. But, I mean, I loved his quote after the game. He said, "Our destination isn't to be 2-0 and beat Michigan. We feel like we have a heck of a team, and we have an opportunity to win a lot of big-time challenges ahead of us, to have a really good season. So I'm really excited with what this team can become." So he knows. He knows that this team hasn't hit its peak yet. But I love the balance here, celebrating a signature moment while staying focused on what's still ahead for this program this season. And that's exactly where Oklahoma sits right now, balanced. So as we close out this episode, let's break this down. I've got 6 takeaways from Oklahoma's big night on Saturday night. And we got to start with, I think the biggest story here was that the defense delivered a statement. Brent Venables has built his name as one of the best defensive minds in college football. And I think Saturday night was the clearest example yet of why Oklahoma brought him back to Norman. Now, we've said it so much. Bryce Underwood, true freshman. But we haven't used the word phenom enough post-game. We haven't talked about the fact that Justice Haynes came from Alabama. He was a bruising running back. And Oklahoma's defense did not blink. They rattled Underwood all night long. We talked about the 9-24. We talked about the 142 yards. What we haven't talked about enough is that this scheme that Brent Venables was calling, it had Underwood second guessing. It had Underwood rushing throws. And it had the whole, as a team, they were burning timeouts just so they can get plays off. We're going to come back to that. And the ground game, that's Michigan's bread and butter. For the most part, it was stifled. Now, give Haynes his credit. He finished with 146 rushing yards. But I think that number is a little bit deceiving because 75 of those yards came on a single touchdown run there in the third quarter. Outside of that, he had 18 carries for 50 yards. That's 2.7 yards per carry. So the Sooners gave up one big play. Otherwise, they slammed the door on this Michigan offense. And again, I love what Brent Venables said after the game. He said, there will be a byproduct of having a good night like that early in the year. It creates a little bit of momentum. That's real. So the top story here coming out of this game, hands down, is the defense. But number 2 is the John Mateer show. Because while the defense was choking out Michigan's offense, Oklahoma's new quarterback, he was stealing some spotlight himself. He proved to be the difference maker here. He went 21 of 34, 270 yards and a touchdown. He also led the team in rushing, 74 yards, two scores on the ground. So think about that though. Let's put it into the microscope, right? Because Michigan's entire defensive plan was built around not letting Mateer take over. And yet he still did that. And through just two games, he already has 662 passing yards. That's the second most ever for an Oklahoma Sooner quarterback to start their career. Yeah, Josh Heupel. Josh Heupel's number 1 for those of you trying to guess it. But man, that's not just good company. That's championship company. And I think probably the one thing I haven't mentioned enough is some credit needs to be given to Deion Burks. 2 weeks in a row now. 2 weeks in a row, he's been big time. 7 catches Saturday night, 101 yards and a touchdown. But I want to go back. It was Mateer's improvisation, that calm under pressure that really carried this offense. It is really hard. I mean, look, I don't want to keep going back and bagging on Jackson Arnold because, look, Auburn's 2-0. He's off to a decent start himself. But it's really hard to picture Oklahoma winning this game with last year's quarterback play. John Mateer has changed the trajectory of this team. Here's the third big takeaway here. This was a culture-defining win for Oklahoma. It wasn't just about what the box score says. This was about culture. I want to go back to just the perception of Michigan coming in to this game. They were the physical bullies on the block. But on Saturday night, Oklahoma was the tougher of the two teams. They hit harder. They play with more discipline. They controlled the line of scrimmage. And I love the post-game scene. I hope you stayed around in the stadium to see it. I hope you saw it on TV. You got Oklahoma players carrying Brent Venables off the field, carrying them on their shoulders. The crowd was going crazy. The cameras got it on video. And Venables said afterwards, for a moment, they, talking about his team, they get to celebrate and be proud of their team and their school. But that's an expectation here. We met the criteria today. Job well done by our guys. There's a culture shift, and that's it right there. This wasn't just a fun upset. This was Oklahoma reminding everyone that this is who we expect to be. So let's go to number 4, because I think you just have to say this. There are questions. You can't watch these. You can't have watched these 2 weeks and not come away with this conclusion that there are questions in the running game. Not everything was perfect Saturday night. And I think if there's one area of concern, it's the running game behind John Mateer. Jaden Ott was brought in to be the feature back, and he clearly is not healthy. 2 games in, he's got just 6 rushing yards on 5 carries. He looks tentative. He doesn't have the burst that we saw in his highlights from Cal. And with him being where he is physically, Oklahoma's turned to Javonte Barnes and Torrey Blaylock. And they had their moments. But it really it wasn't enough to truly dictate tempo. So outside of Mateer scrambling, the Sooners didn't really have a running game. They only managed 138 rushing yards total. And you just got to wonder going into this SEC schedule that we talked about, is that going to cut it? Is that, I said in our pregame, I said the floor was 150. Now they missed it by 12 yards and they still won comfortably. But you can't not be concerned, I don't think, about the running game. And it really just kind of begs the question, with Temple coming up, maybe you just sit John, maybe just sit Jaden Ott. Let him heal before Auburn comes in for that SEC opener. Like if they can beat Michigan without him being healthy, I think they can beat Temple. But they need, going into conference play for this long haul, they're going to need Jaden Ott at full strength. All right, here's number 5. And you look at the road ahead, it's kind of a reality check. We talked about this. Saturday's win bumped the Sooners up to number 13 in the AP poll. But this celebration, it really can't last that long. The schedule, it is absolutely a gauntlet. You still got Tennessee, LSU, Texas, Auburn, Ole Miss, South Carolina. They're all just lurking out there. Now, the good news is that, they've proven that they can win the right way. Like we talked about this whole podcast, defense and quarterback play. That's the formula. And they've shown against the world, they show, to the world against Michigan, they've got both of those things. So this is not the Big 12 version of Oklahoma. This is a team that's built to survive this SEC grind, but dang, it is going to be a grind. And there are plenty of potential road bumps ahead. All right, so here's the last one. Number 6. Undoubtedly, this was just a defining night. I think Brent Venables was smart to downplay things. It's early September. One win right here, it's not going to make a season. It could have broken the season, but it's not going to make the season. But make no mistake, this was a defining night. Oklahoma needed to produce evidence that their rebuild was more than just talk. And they did that on Saturday night. The world got to see that evidence. And the last time Oklahoma knocked off a ranked non-conference opponent this early was in 2017 at Ohio State. And we know what that win did for not just for Baker Mayfield, but for this program. It ended up catapulting them into the college football playoff. Now, I don't think anybody's saying at this point that this team is playoff bound. But I don't think you can help but notice the parallels, though, between these two. What we know right now is this. Oklahoma's not a year away. They're here. With John Mateer at quarterback and this defense setting the tone, the Sooners, they're one of the most intriguing teams in college football. There's just no way around that. The country wanted to know. The voters wanted to know. The coaches wanted to know if Oklahoma could hang in the SEC. On Saturday night in front of 85,000 fans, a national primetime audience, the Sooners provided that answer, and it was absolutely. So that's where we'll leave things for this episode. 24-13, it was a signature win. It was a turning point, and maybe, just maybe that it's the night that we'll look back on as the moment that Oklahoma football truly arrived to the SEC. I hope you have a great week wherever it takes you this week. We'll be back later on, more stuff to talk about, recapping Michigan. Like I said, you can find us online, heartland-sports.com. Enjoy your week.
I'm gonna be the man who's